What if I told you that the secret to growing pepper plants so heavy with fruit their branches snap isn't found in a modern garden center, but in a 3,000-year-old text that never once mentions nitrogen, phosphorus, or potassium? Most people don't know this, but the Bible contains an entire agricultural system designed for abundance in harsh, unforgiving climates, and modern soil science is only now catching up to why these ancient methods produced harvests that would make a modern gardener weep with envy. Today, I'm walking you through 20 biblical growing secrets, ranked from surprisingly helpful to absolutely transformational. Stick around, because the method at number 13 uses a waste product your body produces every single day, and modern agronomists have discovered it contains a specific enzyme that increases cell division rates in fruiting plants by up to 30%. And number 20, the ultimate secret, involves a specific tree mentioned in the book of Revelation whose leaves, when applied to your soil, trigger a hormonal response in peppers that literally forces the plant to double its fruit set. These aren't folk tales. These are genuine agricultural principles hidden in plain sight within Scripture. And by the end of this video, you will never look at your garden or your Bible the same way again. Before we unearth these ancient secrets, do me a favor. If you want to grow food the way our ancestors did, food so nutrient-dense and abundant it defies modern expectations, hit that subscribe button and ring the bell. I release new videos every week on the forgotten intersection of biblical wisdom and modern science, and you don't want to miss what's coming. Here are 20 biblical growing secrets, ranked from remarkably effective to absolutely miraculous, that will make your peppers love you. Number 20. The new moon planting cycle. The celestial timekeeper of the ancient farmer. In Genesis chapter 1, verse 14, God declares that the lights in the firmament are for signs and for seasons, and for days and years. The Hebrew word translated as seasons is moed, which literally means an appointed time, a fixed meeting. Ancient Israelite farmers did not plant by a calendar on the wall. They planted by the moon. They watched the sky with a reverence we have lost, standing in their fields at dusk, feeling the cooling earth beneath their bare feet, and looking up at the thin crescent of the new moon hanging low on the horizon. That sliver of silver was the signal. The waiting was over, and modern science has caught up to what they knew in their bones. Research on lunar gravitational pull demonstrates that during the new moon, when the moon is between the Earth and the Sun, the combined gravitational force pulls soil moisture closer to the surface. Seeds sown during this phase imbibe water faster. Germination rates increase. Root exudates, the chemical signals roots release into the soil, are more concentrated during specific lunar phases, attracting beneficial bacteria precisely when the seedling needs them. The biblical farmer understood this not as esoteric mysticism, but as reading the clock God hung in the sky, a clock that ticks in the tug of water and the stirring of seeds. Here's the traditional use. Plant your pepper seeds on the day of the new moon, or within the 48 hours that follow. Mark it on your calendar. Step outside and look up. The increasing light of the waxing moon pulls energy upward, encouraging strong top growth. Think of it as synchronizing your garden's heartbeat with the rhythm that was set in motion before the first seed ever touched soil, a rhythm that still pulses through every living thing if you only stop and listen. Number 19. The gleaning margin. The charitable hedge of the harvest. Leviticus chapter 19, verses 9 and 10, commands that when you reap the harvest of your land, you shall not wholly reap the corners of your field, neither shall you gather the gleanings of your harvest. You shall leave them for the poor and the stranger. This was charity, yes, a command to care for the widow, the orphan, the foreigner passing through. But it was also a profound ecological principle that we are only now beginning to understand. Those unharvested peppers and grains at the field's edge were not wasted. They became habitat. They were a city of refuge for predatory insects, the very insects that devour aphids, mites, and hornworms. A pepper left to ripen and soften on the plant attracts a specific parade of life. First come the pollinators, then the tiny parasitic wasps that lay their eggs inside caterpillar eggs, then the lady beetles that march across the leaves devouring aphids by the dozen. Modern integrated pest management calls this a refuge strip, and it is considered a cutting-edge, organic practice. By leaving a sacrificial margin, you build a standing army of beneficial wasps, lady beetles, and lacewings that patrol your entire garden. The biblical farmer wasn't just being generous. He was engineering a self-defending ecosystem, a garrison of guardians paid in fruit. Here's the traditional use. Designate the outer row of your pepper patch, or every 10th plant, as a no-harvest zone. Let the fruit ripen fully, wrinkle, and fall. Watch as the wasps arrive, tiny and glinting in the sun. Think of it as paying your garden security detail in peppers, a tithe of the harvest that returns to you tenfold in protection. Number 18. The ashes of the red heifer. The mineral resurrection dust. Numbers chapter 19 describes a specific ritual involving the burning of a red heifer, where cedar wood, hyssop, and scarlet wool are added to the fire, and the resulting ashes are mixed with living water to create a water of purification. The ceremony was solemn, conducted outside the camp, the priest watching as the heifer was reduced to ash and the aromatic cedar crackled and popped in the flames. Setting aside the ceremonial purpose, look at the chemistry. Hardwood ash is potash, potassium carbonate. Cedar wood ash is particularly rich in calcium and magnesium. Hyssop contains antimicrobial volatile oils. When you combine these specific ashes and steep them in water, you create a potent, soluble mineral solution that is powerfully alkaline. A solution that fizzes slightly when you stir it, releasing tiny bubbles of trapped air. Modern pepper growers know that blossom end rot, that black leathery patch on the bottom of your fruit that starts as a small water-soaked spot and spreads until the pepper is ruined, is a calcium deficiency often caused by inconsistent watering. The biblical ash water was a direct antidote, a mineral supplement delivered in a form plants could absorb immediately through their roots. Here's the traditional use. Save clean hardwood ash, ideally from oak or cedar, never from treated lumber or charcoal briquettes. Mix 1 cup of ash into 5 gallons of water. Let it steep for 48 hours, stirring it once or twice a day. The water will turn a cloudy gray. Then water your pepper plants at the base with this liquid mineral booster once a month during fruit set. Think of it as giving your peppers a glass of milk for strong bones, straight from the altar, a drink of dissolved stone that hardens cell walls and makes fruit firm and unblemished. Number 17. The breath of life compost, the living spirit of the soil. In Genesis chapter 2, verse 7, God forms man from the dust of the ground and breathes into his nostrils the breath of life, and man becomes a living soul. The Hebrew word for breath is neshama, and it implies a vital, animating force, the warm exhalation of the Creator into cold clay. Ancient compost making was seen not as decay, but as a slow breathing of life back into the soil. A good compost pile, built with care and attention, is warm to the touch. If you push your hand into its center on a cool morning, you will feel the heat radiating back, a fever of transformation. Modern soil biology reveals that a truly living compost pile is not a heap of rot. It is a lung. Aerobic bacteria, fungi, and actinomycetes respire, taking in oxygen and releasing carbon dioxide and heat. The heat of a compost pile is the metabolic breath of billions of organisms. When that finished compost is added to your pepper bed, you are not just adding nutrients. You are inoculating the soil with living breath, with a microbiome that solubilizes phosphorus, fixes nitrogen from the air, and even communicates with plant roots through chemical signals. The mycorrhizal fungi in that compost will physically attach to your pepper roots and extend their reach tenfold, mining water and minerals from pockets of soil the roots could never access alone. Here's the traditional use. Build your compost pile in layers, alternating green and brown materials, and turn it frequently to keep it breathing. When it smells like sweet forest earth and is crumbly and dark, apply a 2-inch layer around your peppers. Think of it as wrapping your plants in a living blanket that breathes warmth and life into their roots, a blanket woven from the exhaled breath of a billion invisible creatures. Number 16. The fig tree intercessor, the companion that prays for your peppers. In 1 Kings chapter 4, verse 25, during Solomon's reign, every man dwelt safely under his vine and under his fig tree. The fig tree was a symbol of peace and prosperity, a place of shaded rest in the heat of the day. But it was also a functional companion plant, a partner in the garden ecosystem. Fig trees have an aggressive, fibrous root system that mines deep minerals from the subsoil, calcium, magnesium, and trace elements that shallow-rooted vegetables cannot reach. Their roots plunge downward through layers of rock and clay, dissolving nutrients and pulling them up into the tree's massive canopy. The fig tree's massive leaves, broad and rough like a hand, drop and decompose, creating a rich, moisture-retentive mulch that smells sweetly of fermentation as it breaks down. And the tree itself provides dappled, partial shade, which pepper plants, despite loving sun, actually benefit from during the most brutal afternoon heat. Sunscald on pepper fruits, those bleached, papery patches that ruin the flesh, is dramatically reduced under the filtered light of a fig canopy. Here's the traditional use. If you live in a climate where figs grow, plant a fig tree on the western side of your pepper bed. The tree will shield your peppers from the harshest afternoon sun, while its roots mine nutrients from deep in the earth and deposit them on the surface as leaf litter. Think of it as a towering, gentle guardian that shelters your peppers and feeds them from the depths, an intercessor standing between your tender plants and the scorching wrath of the sun. Number 15. The hyssop purification spray, the antimicrobial mist of the covenant. Psalm 51, verse 7, pleads, "Purge me with hyssop, and I shall be clean." Hyssop, likely Origanum syriacum, or Syrian oregano, was the brush used to apply lamb's blood to the doorposts in Exodus. It was the herb of purification, a woody, aromatic shrub that grew in rocky crevices and was bound into bundles for ritual use. And modern science has revealed why this particular plant was chosen. Hyssop essential oil contains carvacrol, thymol, and rosmarinic acid, compounds with potent antifungal and antibacterial properties. These are volatile, pungent molecules that disrupt the cell membranes of pathogens. A simple water extraction, a tea of hyssop, sprayed on pepper leaves, suppresses powdery mildew, bacterial leaf spot, and early blight without harming beneficial soil life. This was not symbolic cleanliness. It was practical plant medicine. Here's the traditional use. Steep a handful of fresh hyssop or oregano leaves in a quart of boiling water until it cools. The water will darken and release a sharp, medicinal fragrance. Strain, add a drop of Castile soap as a surfactant, and spray your pepper foliage every 2 weeks during humid weather. Think of it as a cleansing prayer for your plants, a protective veil against the invisible diseases that seek to devour your harvest, a mist that settles on the leaves like a whispered blessing. Number 14. The vineyard terrace, the contour that captures blessing. Isaiah chapter 5, verse 1, describes a vineyard on a very fruitful hill, a hillside that was dug and cleared of stones and planted with the choicest vines. The image is of a hillside transformed by human labor and divine blessing, a slope that should have shed water and eroded instead, holding soil and producing abundance. Hillside terracing is ancient, but its genius is only now fully appreciated by permaculture designers. A slope planted in peppers without terracing loses water and topsoil to runoff. The rain, instead of soaking in, sheets off, carrying away your fertility. A terrace interrupts that flow, forcing water to slow down, spread out and sink in. The stone walls of a biblical terrace act as thermal mass, absorbing heat during the day and radiating it back at night. If you place your hand on a terrace wall at midnight, it will still be warm. This stored heat extends the growing season for heat-loving peppers by weeks. Here's the traditional use. If your garden has even a slight slope, create small, level planting beds supported by stones or logs on the downhill side. Plant your peppers on these level terraces. The water will stay where it falls, and the stones will keep your peppers warm long after the sun goes down. Think of it as carving a bowl into the hillside to catch every drop of rain and every ray of sun. A bowl that holds the blessing instead of letting it run away. Number 13. The living water, urine fertilizer. The golden flow of creation cycle. This is the one I told you about. In 2 Kings chapter 18, verse 27, the Rabshakeh of Assyria taunts the defenders of Jerusalem, asking if they will be forced to drink their own urine. In the ancient world, urine was understood as a waste, but also critically as a potent source of ammonia. And ammonia is nitrogen. Fullers, the ancient launderers, used stale urine to bleach cloth, exploiting its ammonia content. Urea, the primary nitrogen compound in urine, is converted by soil bacteria into ammonium and then nitrate, the exact form of nitrogen plants crave. Modern agronomic research, including studies from institutions in Finland and Sweden, has demonstrated that source-separated human urine, properly diluted, is an extraordinarily effective fertilizer, particularly for fruiting crops. Urine also contains phosphorus, potassium, and micronutrients in plant-available forms. The enzyme urease, present in soil, hydrolyzes urea rapidly, making the nitrogen accessible. A specific study found that urine fertilization increased pepper fruit yield and vitamin C content compared to synthetic fertilizers. The biblical taboo around human waste was about sanitation and holiness, not about the nitrogen cycle God designed. Here's the traditional use. Collect urine in a clean container. Dilute it at a ratio of 1 part urine to 10 parts water. Apply this to the soil around your pepper plants, never on the leaves, once every 2 weeks during the vegetative growth phase. Stop once flowering begins to encourage fruit set over leaf production. A word of caution. If you are taking any medications, particularly hormone-based drugs or antibiotics, do not use your urine on food plants. The residues can persist in the soil and be taken up by the plants. Think of it as returning to the soil what was always meant to cycle back, a closed loop of fertility that modern sanitation foolishly broke, a golden stream of life that we have been flushing away in ignorance for a century. Number 12. The oil lamp warmth. The flickering furnace against the frost. In the parable of the 10 virgins in Matthew chapter 25, the wise took oil in their vessels with their lamps. Olive oil lamps provided light, a soft golden glow that pushed back the darkness. But they also provided a small, steady, radiant heat. Ancient gardeners in climates with unexpected late spring frosts would place stone vessels filled with burning oil among tender plants. A single olive oil lamp, burning through the night, can raise the ambient temperature within a small enclosed space by several degrees, enough to prevent frost from forming on pepper leaves. The stone absorbs the heat and releases it slowly, functioning exactly like a modern greenhouse heater, but without electricity or fossil fuels. Here's the traditional use. If a late frost threatens your pepper starts, place several large stones around your plants during the day to absorb solar heat. At night, place a small, safe oil lamp or even several candles in glass lanterns among the stones. A floating wick in a dish of olive oil burns cleanly for hours. The combination of stored solar heat and the lamp's radiant warmth can save your peppers from a killing frost. Think of it as keeping a tiny, faithful flame of protection burning through the coldest hours of the night, a vigil of light and warmth that stands guard while you sleep. Number 11. The mustard seed soil amendment. The tiny bomb of biofumigation. In Matthew chapter 13, verse 31, Jesus compares the kingdom of heaven to a mustard seed, the smallest of all seeds, which grows into the greatest of shrubs. Mustard is a brassica, and brassicas are powerful biofumigants. When mustard plant tissue is chopped and incorporated into the soil, it releases glucosinolates, which break down into isothiocyanates, the same pungent compounds that give mustard its heat. These compounds are powerfully suppressive to soil-borne pathogens, including verticillium wilt, fusarium, and root knot nematodes, all of which devastate pepper plants. Planting mustard as a cover crop and then turning it into the soil before planting your peppers is a technique modern organic farmers call biofumigation. The ancient farmer who rotated mustard into his fields was unknowingly sterilizing his soil with a chemical weapon produced by the plant itself. Here's the traditional use. Sow mustard seed thickly in the bed where you plan to plant peppers next season. Let it grow until it begins to flower, but before it sets seed. Chop it down and till it into the top 6 inches of soil. Wait 3 weeks, then plant your peppers into the sanitized, enriched earth. Think of it as a microscopic army marching into the soil and clearing out every hidden enemy before your peppers even arrive. Number 10. The Sabbath rest rotation. The fallow year of renewal. Leviticus chapter 25 commands a Sabbath for the land, a year of complete rest every 7th year, where fields are not sown nor pruned. Modern agriculture has learned, painfully, what happens when this law is ignored. Continuous cropping of peppers depletes specific micronutrients, builds up pepper-specific pathogens in the soil, and exhausts the organic matter that holds water and feeds microbes. A fallow year, or a year planted in a restorative cover crop like clover or vetch, allows mycorrhizal fungal networks to rebuild, allows bacterial diversity to recover, and allows deep-rooted plants to mine nutrients from the subsoil and deposit them on the surface. The land literally heals itself when left alone. Here's the traditional use. Divide your garden into 7 sections. Each year 1 section rests. Plant it in a nitrogen-fixing cover crop like crimson clover, and do not harvest it. Simply mow it and let the residue lie. Your peppers, when they return to that section after 7 years, will grow in soil that has been spiritually and biologically renewed. Think of it as honoring a sacred rhythm that restores the very soul of your soil. Number 9. The salted manure of the dung gate. The fermented fertility of transformation. In Nehemiah chapter 2, verse 13, Nehemiah inspects the walls of Jerusalem by the dung gate, the exit through which the city's animal waste was taken out. In the ancient world, manure was not simply piled up and left to rot. It was mixed with salt and straw and allowed to ferment. Salt, in small amounts, acts as a preservative that slows the microbial breakdown, allowing a more controlled fermentation rather than a putrefaction. The result is a stabilized, pathogen-reduced, nutrient-dense material. Modern composting science understands that thermophilic composting, the hot composting process, is essentially a controlled fermentation that kills weed seeds and pathogens. The ancient practice of salting manure was an intuitive step toward this. Here's the traditional use. If you have access to herbivore manure, rabbit, goat, or horse, mix it with a handful of natural salt, sea salt or mined salt, per wheelbarrow load, along with plenty of carbon-rich straw. Pile it, keep it moist, and turn it every few days. The salt moderates the process, and after a few weeks, You have a rich, dark, crumbly material that feeds your peppers without burning their roots. Think of it as transforming what the world discards as waste into black gold, a resurrection of fertility from the dung heap. Number 8. The acacia wood stake. The incorruptible support. In Exodus chapter 25, God commands Moses to build the Ark of the Covenant from acacia wood, overlaid with gold. Acacia wood, shittim wood in Hebrew, is dense, hard, and remarkably resistant to rot and insects. It grows in the desert, surviving conditions that destroy other woods. When you stake your pepper plants, the stake you choose matters. Pine stakes rot in a single season. Bamboo, while useful, can harbor fungal spores. Acacia wood, or its modern equivalents like black locust or cedar, contains natural antifungal and insect-repelling resins and tannins. A stake that does not rot at the soil line does not become a bridge for disease to enter your plant stem. Here's the traditional use. Source stakes made from rot-resistant wood, cedar, black locust, or if you can find it, acacia. Drive them into the ground at planting time, not later when roots have spread. Tie your pepper stems loosely with natural twine, allowing room for growth. Think of the stake as a spine of righteousness, an incorruptible support that will not fail your plant as it bears the weight of its own abundance. Number 7. The pomegranate flowering signal. The calendar of the blooming prophets. In the Song of Solomon chapter 6, verse 11, the beloved goes down to the garden to see if the vine has budded and the pomegranates are in bloom. Pomegranates bloom relatively late in the spring, after the danger of frost has truly passed. Ancient farmers used phenology, the observation of recurring biological events, as their planting calendar. When the pomegranate blooms, the soil has warmed sufficiently for heat-loving crops. This is not folklore. It is an integrated response to accumulated heat units, the same growing degree days that modern agronomists calculate with computers. The pomegranate tree has been computing this calculation for millennia. When its internal biological clock, triggered by soil temperature and day length, tells it to bloom, it is also telling you to plant your peppers. Here's the traditional use. If you have a pomegranate, or even a reliable late-blooming tree like a black locust or a catalpa, observe it. When its first blossoms open, transplant your pepper seedlings into the ground. The soil will be warm. The frosts will be finished. If you do not have such a tree, plant one. Think of it as installing a living, biological thermometer that God programmed to tell you exactly when to plant. Number 6. The grapevine shade canopy. The living lattice of tempered sunlight. In Micah chapter 4, verse 4, the vision of peace is that everyone shall sit under his vine and under his fig tree. A grape arbor, trained over a simple wooden framework, creates a microclimate of dappled shade and elevated humidity. Peppers grown in full, brutal all-day sun, particularly in southern climates, often experience heat stress that causes blossom drop. The plant, in survival mode, aborts its flowers rather than attempt to set fruit in conditions it perceives as lethal. A grape arbor planted on the south side of a pepper bed provides a lattice of large leaves that filters the most intense midday sun, reducing leaf temperature and transpiration stress, while still allowing the full spectrum of morning and late afternoon light that drives photosynthesis. Here's the traditional use. Plant a row of grapevines on a sturdy trellis along the southern edge of your pepper bed. Train the vines to create a partial canopy, not a solid roof. The peppers will receive shifting, dappled light throughout the day, protected from the searing heat that tells them to stop producing. Think of it as a veil of green lace, softening the sun's harsh gaze into a gentle, fruitful warmth. Number 5. The olive oil foliar feed. The anointing that strengthens from above. In James chapter 5, verse 14, the elders anoint the sick with oil in the name of the Lord. Olive oil was a symbol of the Holy Spirit, of healing, of consecration. But it is also a lipid. When highly diluted and emulsified in water, a very light spray of olive oil on pepper leaves can smother soft-bodied insects like aphids, whiteflies, and spider mites by clogging their spiracles, their breathing pores. More subtly, the fatty acids in olive oil are absorbed by the leaf cuticle, strengthening it and making it more resistant to fungal penetration. This is not a heavy coating that suffocates the leaf. It is a microscopic film, a shield. Here's the traditional use. Mix 1 teaspoon of pure olive oil with a few drops of natural liquid soap in a quart of warm water. Shake vigorously until the oil is fully emulsified. Spray this on your pepper leaves in the early morning, ensuring complete coverage on both the tops and undersides of the leaves. Apply once every 2 weeks or after heavy rain. Think of it as anointing your plants for healing and protection, a visible sign of an invisible shield. Number 4. The wheat straw mulch of Bethlehem. The golden blanket of humility. In the book of Ruth, Ruth gleans in the barley and wheat fields of Boaz, fields that surrounded Bethlehem, which means house of bread. After the grain is harvested, the straw remains. Wheat straw, laid thickly around pepper plants, is a mulch of profound utility. It suppresses weeds, yes, but it also reflects light upward into the underside of the pepper plant, increasing photosynthesis in leaves that are normally shaded. It keeps the soil cool and moist, reducing the stress that causes blossom drop. And as it slowly decomposes, it feeds the soil fungi, particularly the decomposers that unlock phosphorus, the element most critical for flower and fruit production. Modern plastic mulches have replaced straw in commercial agriculture, but plastic does not feed the soil. Straw is a mulch that becomes a meal. Here's the traditional use. After your pepper transplants are established and the soil has warmed, apply a thick, 4 to 6 inch layer of clean wheat or barley straw around each plant, leaving a small gap around the stem to prevent rot. Water deeply and watch the soil life awaken beneath the golden mat. Think of it as tucking your peppers into a bed of bread, a blanket woven from the very fields where provision itself was born. Number 3. The frankincense resin rooting aid. The sacred seal against decay. Frankincense, the gift of the Magi, the incense of the tabernacle, is the dried resin of Boswellia trees. It was burned as a fragrant offering, but it was also a powerful medicine. Modern research has identified boswellic acids, the active compounds in frankincense, as potent anti-inflammatories and antimicrobials. When you take a cutting from a pepper plant, the severed stem is an open wound, vulnerable to fungal and bacterial rot. Dipping that wound in a slurry made from frankincense powder seals it, disinfects it, and stimulates the plant's own wound-healing response. The boswellic acids inhibit the pathogens that cause damping off, the sudden collapse of cuttings before they can root. Here's the traditional use. Purchase pure frankincense resin and grind it into a fine powder. When taking pepper cuttings, dip the cut end in water, then into the frankincense powder, then into your rooting medium. The resin seals the wound and protects it while roots form. Think of it as offering a sacred gift at the moment of severing, a fragrant seal that whispers to the cutting, "You will not die, you will multiply." Number 2. The river water irrigation. The living flow that carries life. In Ezekiel chapter 47, the prophet sees a vision of water flowing from the temple, a river that brings life wherever it goes, turning the Dead Sea fresh and causing trees to bear fruit every month. Stagnant water, water from a barrel that sits still and grows warm, loses its dissolved oxygen. Anaerobic bacteria multiply. Watering your peppers with this dead water suffocates their roots. Living water, water that moves, water that has flowed over rocks and cascaded and churned, is saturated with dissolved oxygen. Rainwater is the ultimate living water, having fallen through the atmosphere and absorbed gases. River water, stream water, even water that has been vigorously poured back and forth between two buckets, carries oxygen to the root zone, fueling the aerobic respiration that drives nutrient uptake. Here's the traditional use. Collect rainwater whenever possible. If you must use stored water, aerate it before applying. Pour it from a height, stir it vigorously, or use a simple aquarium airstone for an hour before watering. Your pepper roots will breathe. Think of it as giving your plants not just a drink, but a breath, a draft of the living water that flows from the very source of life. Number 1. The leaves of the tree of life. The ultimate healing for the nations. This is the one. Revelation chapter 22, verse 2, describes the tree of life, bearing 12 kinds of fruit, yielding its fruit each month, and the leaves of the tree are for the healing of the nations. This is a vision of ultimate restoration, but it points to a profound agricultural truth. Leaves are the solar panels of the plant, the factories of sugar, the engines of growth. But leaves also contain hormones, growth regulators, and phytochemicals. Modern science has isolated a group of compounds called triacontanol, a long-chain fatty alcohol found in the leaf waxes of many plants, including alfalfa. Triacontanol is a potent plant growth stimulant. When applied as a foliar spray in minute quantities, it increases photosynthesis, increases cell division, and dramatically increases fruit set and size in peppers. The leaves of one plant, properly processed, can become the healing and the growth stimulation for another. The tree of life's leaves healing the nations is a picture of this cascading, generative abundance, where the very waste of one part of creation becomes the medicine for another. Here's the traditional use. Harvest fresh alfalfa, or even the healthy green leaves of your own comfrey or nettle plants. Chop them finely and steep them in water for several weeks, creating a fermented plant juice. Strain it, dilute it until it is the color of weak tea, and spray it on your pepper plants at the onset of flowering. The triacontanol and other growth factors will trigger a visible surge in fruit production. Think of it as a direct transfusion from the tree of life itself. A sip of the green blood of creation, poured out over your peppers so that they might bear fruit more abundantly than you ever thought possible. The healing of the nations begins in your own backyard, one pepper plant at a time.